All right, so I want to talk about a huge mental weakness that you or a loved one might have. It's called black or white thinking. So it's going to sound like yes or no, all or nothing, or the most popular good and evil, right? This is a very simplified way to look at the world, and you and everything in the world is extremely complicated. You know that you're extremely complicated. Everyone else is as well. Things are not that simple. People want to break things down to black and white, good and evil, because it's an easy mental load for them. But it doesn't match on to reality. You are fooling yourself and you are delusional. And when you're not with reality, you are weaker by definition. Let's say you just all of a sudden decide that fire is not hot anymore. Well, you know what? Fire doesn't care whether you think it's hot or not. If you go walk in a fire, you're going to get burnt up. So it is always better to be looking more clearly at reality than less clearly. And this black or white thinking, it's going to leave you weaker. You're not going to be seeing reality. So everything is really in shades of gray. That is how everything works. Everything is way more complicated than you would ever dream. If this turns off any of my religious or spiritual friends, I don't think it needs to. I think I've heard a lot of people say that God's the ultimate good and devil's the ultimate bad. That's fine. But you could probably agree that like people are on a different level than your God, your devil, your good or evil. That doesn't apply to mankind. Mankind is very complicated, and everything we do is shades of gray. Now, there's a spectrum of gray, of darker to light, and some things may be really dark. But don't forget, from other people's points of view, they're the hero in the story. They have a motivation, they have an angle, they have an origin story, they have a reason. And yes, you can point out maybe some very extreme examples to try to break this general rule, but they're just very far on that spectrum, very far in the dark part of the gray. But other than that, people are very complicated. Saying good or evil is just a very lazy way to write people off, and so you don't have to use the mental horsepower. Now you may say, "Well, I don't care what their point of view is. I don't care what they think. I don't want to know. They're crazy." Well, it's really easy to do that with other sides of the political aisle or religions or anybody that you've had a tough time with. But just remember, you're not fully in reality anymore. You are making yourself weak. It's best to know thy enemy, right? And it's just a phrase, but you're going to be going into life with no armor, no sword. You are not seeing reality for what it is. And if you actually listen to somebody and give them the time and see their motivation, where they come from, their point of view, they may not be your enemy anymore. And that's another thing to consider. On the micro level, this has to do with how you manage yourself. If you are with black or white thinking, like I have to work out every day, or this has to be perfect, you are being very unfair to yourself. It's very unrealistic. It's going to cause you a lot of suffering. And in the end, again, you're going to be weaker than if you saw the shades of greater reality because you aren't in reality. On the macro, this is just not how the world works. So again, you are not going to have the proper tools, the proper vision to judge people, places, and things out in the world. This falls under the category of what I would call yellow thinking and spiral dynamics. If you want to learn more about that, search for separate videos on it. But it is basically much more of an open-minded way of thinking. Things are much more complicated than they appear. You know you're complicated. Give that same grace to other people. They have a whole origin story and a point of view, and most of the time they think they're right and they're the hero. So avoid black and white thinking. Remember, everything is a shade of gray. Take care, everybody.